So, to create the example, I will use a VPS from Hetzner. This one I bought is the small plan. It costs $5 per month. It has 2 virtual CPUs, 2 gigabytes of RAM, and 40 gigabytes of disk. When it comes to cloud computing, it's always better to use horizontal scaling, that is, to have more machines with more basic configurations than vertical scaling, which is to have a very powerful machine with very high configurations and is more expensive. The main advantage is, it's because if there's a problem with one machine, it doesn't stop your entire environment, right? So it's preferable to have the small machine, and if needed, you add other machines to meet your demand. I've already fully configured this machine, already installed it, right? To give an example, but what I'm going to do here is a rebuild to reset the VPS. We will use the Ubuntu 22.04 distribution, and we will start from absolute 0. Here, I am already in my local environment, in my WSL, and I will use it to access my VPS via SSH. So I will enter the command here, SSH root, which is the user, at the IP of our VPS. It will ask for the password, and it will send me the password by email. And now, on the first access, it will already ask me to change the password. So I enter the current password here first. It asks for the new password. Okay. Now, it's all set. I'm already here on my VPS. And here it will show me Ubuntu 22.04. Let's start by updating the environment here. So, let's go ahead and install Docker now. Let's add the Docker repository so we can update the environment again. And now we are actually going to install Docker itself, right? So, I will leave all the detailed commands for you right here in the video comments. That way, you don't have to pause the video or worry about missing anything. Now that Docker is properly installed on our machine, we can move forward and run a quick test together, right? The version 28.3.3, and we can also give the docker run command. Hello world. It's not fun, it's run. All set, working perfectly. Our environment already has Docker. Let's now create the structure of folders for our environment. So, let's use mkdir here. We will have the folder inside the OPT directory, where we will create the Docker folder. The -p option ensures that if any of the specified folders don't already exist, they will be created automatically. Inside the Docker folder, we will have 3 subfolders, one for Traefik, one for MySQL, and one for the projects. Traefik is our reverse proxy, responsible for managing the subdomain, the SSL certificate, and all the related configurations. Perfect. The folders are now created, so let's go ahead and access them. We have the 3 folders here. Let's start with the configuration of Traefik. We are going to create the docker-compose file to define the Traefik configurations now. For that, we will use the nano editor. I'll paste its content here. It will come with version 2.10 and the service will be named Traefik. Here we define the container name. By default, it won't remain stopped. It will only stop if manually disabled. We also set up the volumes to be created here, as well as the network configuration, which will use the web network. And here it also creates the external network. Let's press Ctrl X here, save. And we will also need another configuration file for Traefik here. In this file, we need to make a small customization by adding your correct email address in the designated field. This email will be used for certificate management and notifications, so it's important to enter it properly. Once that's done, we can go ahead and close the file and save the changes. After that, the next step will be to create the file responsible for storing the SSL certificate. And we will change the file permission here as well. In this step, we will create the Docker network. It created the network here, and now we can launch our container. I will just take a look here, make sure that I have the 3 files, and let's go to Docker. So, this command here will make the container start. Very well, it's up. If I run a docker ps, I will check the status of the container. So, it's here. Up means it started 8 seconds ago. Our Traefik is already configured, so we already have Docker installed and we also have Traefik working. What we are going to do now, as a requirement for our setup, is configure the database. In my projects, I normally use MySQL as the main database. To keep things organized, I will create a dedicated container for MySQL, and I'll also add phpMyAdmin. This tool will make it much easier to access the database, manage tables, and perform tasks such as importing or exporting data. So we are going to create this MySQL container now. And here we are going to create the custom MySQL Docker Compose. So, we will have all the initial MySQL configurations here. We will need to customize a few things here. We will start here with the root password. Actually, I will leave it as it is. Root password 1, 2, 3. It will create an initial database called maindb. It will also create a user, maindb user, and a password, your password user 1, 2, 3. Further down here, we will have the phpMyAdmin configurations. So we will have a series of options here. And the main, for you who will publish projects on Docker, we will have to configure here, look, the root here, look, the host, where we will change here where it says db.yourdomain. I will call this one pm.a.scriptcase.host. Look, for this to work, you have to create a DNS record on your domain's DNS server scriptcase.com.br to point to the IP of the VPS. Since my domain is within Cloudflare, I will access Cloudflare here. It's already here, Scriptcase. I'm going to add a domain here. I call it's type A, right? This is a type A domain. I will name it PMA, just as I defined earlier for consistency. After that, I'll set the VPS IP address so the service knows where to run. I'll go ahead and launch it here, leaving this particular option unchecked since we don't need it enabled. The little cloud here from the proxy, because in our case we are not going to use the proxy for phpMyAdmin. If you leave it checked, it will cause problems in your project. So let's save here. All set. The record PMA has already been created, pointing to the VPS. So now, when I finish the configuration here, the system will generate the security certificate for me automatically. From this point on, whenever a request is made to this subdomain, it will be securely redirected to the correct container without any additional steps. Finally, we just press Ctrl+X to save and close the file. And type clear here to clear the screen. Let's then start our container here now. The first time will take a little while because it will download all the necessary content, right? All set. Now we can run a docker-ps command to check the running containers. As you can see, we have the Traefik container, the phpMyAdmin container, and also the MySQL container, all running with status up. With everything working correctly, the next step is to test access through the subdomain. And we already have access to our phpMyAdmin screen here. We can log in with the root password, or with the password of that initial user, right? So let's go with the root user. And here I am already in my database that is running inside my MySQL container. I can also access it here through the terminal. I can access MySQL inside the container. Shall we do this here? It's also important to highlight that our phpMyAdmin already has our SSL certificate configured. Traefik itself did this configuration automatically. So this is very interesting. In other projects, it will work the same way. It will create the SSL certificate for each subdomain you point here, automatically. So, to access our database here, through the terminal, I will use this command here, docker exec-it. Then I put the name of the container here, which is MySQL, MySQL-u user-u, which is the user, right? I will put root here and -p to indicate that I will need to enter the password. So it will already ask me for the password here. Let's paste it here. My root password 123. All set. I am accessing my MySQL here through the terminal. So for example, if I type the command show databases, it will list everything and confirm that our setup is working perfectly. If you prefer to run this process directly through the terminal, you also have quick and simple access from here. In addition, you could log in using the other user we created earlier, which was generated automatically during the setup. Now then, we have reached the most important part of our video, which is actually deploying one of our applications to production. So for that, we are going to I will use an example of the school project here, and we will create a folder where we will place this project. So let's do the following. We go down one level here. Let's create the folder projects. So we are here in our school folder, which for now is empty. So this folder will receive our school project. In this case, for running Scriptcase production applications, we will need to apply some specific configurations to the PHP environment. To handle that properly, we'll create a Dockerfile, which will define all the environment settings required for our application to work smoothly. So, what exactly are we going to set up here? Let's take a look. We are going to use Nano. I will paste the content. In this part, we will define the main details of the environment, such as the libraries that Scriptcase normally requires, the error handling settings, and some custom PHP adjustments. We'll also set the rewrite rules and the proper folder permissions to keep everything running smoothly. So this configuration, we don't need to change anything. We can press Ctrl X here to exit and save. And we will also need to create our Docker Compose here, which is where we will customize the domain that will be set up in this for this project. So what are we going to use? Nano as well. So here we will have the school service, the container name school, and at this point we will need to customize our domain, right? So let's get to this point. Be careful here when you are editing, because we have two grave accents here. So if you change them, it might cause a problem and the container might not be able to start. So I will use the subdomain escola.scriptcase.com.br. I will press Ctrl X here and save. And now we need to create this subdomain there. In my case here, I am using Cloudflare. I have to create this subdomain too, Escola, to the same IP here. I'll even copy this right away. Remember to uncheck the proxy here on Cloudflare. I will save. So this will be the domain for my project. So now I can launch this container, but first I have to build it, so to speak. Because since I used the Dockerfile, I have to create the image first. All set, the image was created. It was built there, right? And it takes a little while to do this process. I sped it up here so it wouldn't take your time. And now we're going to launch the container. All set. Docker PS to check. So now we have the container from bottom to top there, right? Of Traefik, phpMyAdmin, MySQL, and now the last one there is the school container, which is the project that we are going to publish, but for now, we still don't have anything inside it. When listing the files here in the folder, we will have these two folders that were created here along with the container, which are the app folder and the uploads folder. The app folder is exactly the HTML folder that is exposed to the browser. So let's enter it here. It has the uploads folder, which is also exposed outside, but I want to do a test here for you to see. Look, let's create a file here to see if it's working, right? So now I created this index file inside the app folder, and I will access the subdomain escola.scriptcase.com.br to check if it is resolving correctly. So you can see that it loaded exactly that index.html file that I placed there. So now what we need to do is precisely put the content of our project inside this folder, and then we configure the connection, and our project will already be working. It's worth noting that these folders appeared here inside the school's project folder, the school's container, because in our Dockerfile, the volume configuration was done. So here we are going to observe here, look, the app volumes will correspond to the folder var./www.html, and the folder uploads var.www.html/uploads. Actually, this uploads might not even be necessary, but here is where it was configured. Which folders? This part here. This is the part that is inside the container, and this here is the part that will be outside, right? Like a binding, a mirroring of the internal part of the container outside the container so you can access it. We also saw this in the other video where we talked about Scriptcase in Docker. There is also the command I showed, which is docker stats, that it will show us the status of the container, how much memory, CPU, and so on it is using. So I will leave it open here precisely so it doesn't end the process here, otherwise it will exit the VPS, and then we have to connect again. And now we are going to work on our Scriptcase project. I will access the development environment here and generate the project, right? The project publication. I will also export the database so we can put all of this on our VPS. For this example, I will use this project here, Escola Google Drive, which was a project we did in a past webinar. I will use it just as an example, right? So let's run it here just to remind you what the project screen looks like. Remember password here now. Pass is admin. So here we have student, material. We were working on Google Drive, the teacher and the class. So this is our example project that we will use to publish inside the container of our VPS. So we go here to Project, Publish. We are going to select all the applications. Since this is our first deployment, we will have to use the production environment here, and the common files as well. So here I will set the initial application as a login. Yeah, on second thought, I'll let it generate a page containing a link to the initial application. Let's move forward here. We will use the tar.gz format. It will generate here the publication of our project. The project publication is finished here. Let's download it here. I will save it here on drive D to make the sending process easier, as we will use SCP to copy from the local machine to the server within the VPS. We're here, the name of the file there is Escola Google Drive. All done, download completed. Let's upload it to the VPS, press Ctrl+C to exit the status, and we'll use the SCP command here. Actually, I'm trying to access the local folder here. I'm forgetting that I'm inside the VPS. First, I have to exit the VPS here. Then I return to my environment. Now I can do an ll/mnd. Yes, now I have the file school. The file is here. so I can use SCP. Now I need to specify which server this file should be sent to. The file you see here is the local source file, and in this step I will define the destination server. By doing that, the system will know exactly where to upload and execute the file. So here, I go ahead and specify the server details. User and the server IP. I put a colon, and I will indicate in which folder this file will be uploaded to the server. So we will take advantage of this path that is already easy here. It will ask for the password. And now it has already started copying the file into the correct folder on the server, where it will later be available for our container. The process is quite fast. It transfers at around 12 megabytes per second, so in just a few moments the file will be fully in place and ready to use. Anyone who has used dial-up connection knows the difference, right? Of course, there are much higher speeds. So now I'm going to access my VPS again here. Let's go into the folder. And here is our file that was copied from the local machine to the VPS. So now I can extract it here. In this case, it's a tar.gz. I will use the command tar-xzf. All done. It decompressed. Let's run the ls command here to see all the files that were decompressed, including that index HTML file we can remove, right? All set. Now we can go back and access our folder once again. From here, the system will load and take us directly to the initial screen of the Scriptcase application, where we can begin working with our projects. And as you can see, it goes straight to the login screen. However, since we don't yet have a database connection configured, we'll need to set that up first. Before doing so, though, there's an important step. We need to adjust the folder permissions. Without the correct permissions, Scriptcase won't be able to save the production environment settings. So let's go ahead and run this command to fix that. All set. The permissions have been granted successfully. Now we can move on to the configuration, but before that, we need to access our database. To do this, I logged into the server panel here, where we can manage and verify the database connection details. We are going to access here, in the database, phpMyAdmin, and the database we are going to use is this one. Look, the schools. We are going to export it here and import it into our phpMyAdmin. You could also do this via command line, which works perfectly as well. But here, since we are Scriptcase users, we are low code, we do it visually, right? Which usually tends to be faster. Let's select the custom option here. I won't use any compression here. The only two interesting options here are in the views, right? Exclude the current user definition and check the option, or replace the view. I'll leave it like this. Let's save it in the Downloads folder. All set, it has already downloaded, and now we can access our phpMyAdmin, which is here, right? Ideally, create a specific user for this database. Here, in this case, it created this main database DB here, which was when the MySQL container was launched. But we are going to create a new database here. Let's go ahead and do that right here in the visual part. Let's call it school. Use the default there. All set, created the school. Let's import the content of the file we just exported from the other one. Perfect. It has already brought the complete database over for us. And now the ideal is to create a specific user for this school database. We can also do this here in privileges. Yes, right here. Now let's go ahead and add a new user account. We'll call this account school_user. For the password, we'll just reuse a simple one for now, the same root password we used earlier, root123. This way it stays consistent and easy to remember during the setup. Here I will assign all the necessary privileges to the school database. Once that's set, I'll go ahead and execute the command. It has now added a new user, and with that done, we can return to Scriptcase to configure our production environment. As part of this setup, we'll also define the password recovery email. For this step, I'll enter the email address here so the system can send recovery instructions if needed. Let's use a difficult password here, the same one. Will it work? It did. We are here in the settings. Security of our production environment. We are going to configure our connection here with MySQL. In our case, as in our production environment, we are using the Docker container. The server here will be MySQL, lowercase. The user we set was, I even forgot the name now, Scholar user. The password, and let's click here and list the database. And here it has already located, yes, the database. Let's check here school, successfully connected. It gives the warning here that it makes the request. Let's try to access it anyway. So it has already landed on our login application. Perfect. Our system is now fully running inside the Docker container within our VPS structure. From here, we can access the applications directly, and everything is functioning just as expected. The environment is up and stable, and the applications are available for use without any issues. So now we have our school application container running smoothly, along with the Traefik container, the MySQL container, and also phpMyAdmin. To verify everything, let's run a docker ps command here and check the list of active containers. And we can observe the 4 containers here. Now, to add new projects within this structure, what do we need to do? We already have the base ready here. We can do a CD here. We have here the docker-compose and the Dockerfile. The Dockerfile will be practically the same thing. And the docker-compose is what you will need to customize to create other projects. Let's suppose you want to launch another Scriptcase project from another system. So what are you going to do? You go back here to a folder. So here in the projects folder, we only have school. Let's create a folder here for a new project. I'll put here, for example, Academy. Then what do? We go CD Academy. There's nothing here. I just created the folder and we're going to copy those 2 files we used for the school now to the gym project. So we're going to do cp:/. Missed putting the dot here, right? And let's also add the Docker file here. So now I have the structure here for the gym, But before uploading, I need to customize the doc file here. So let's go into Nano. What will you need to change? Change the name here now. Now it's not school anymore, it's gym. The container too, we change its name. Here the structure, we can leave the same, and here we change the subdomain that will be used. So now it will be academia.scriptcase.com.br. I press Ctrl X here to save. And I will also create here in my Cloudflare the pointing there again for the subdomain of academia. So let's add a new record here. For the same IP. So here I will run Docker. It will build the project. You can see that creating this image was much faster because it had already done a similar project before, so everything is cached. It creates the image much faster, and now we are going to launch the Academy container. All set. The Academy container is up. And if everything goes well, if we access it now. Let's take advantage of this text here. Look. It has already started up there. There was a problem with the certificate. Probably it hasn't had time to generate the certificate yet. I just created it. But soon it should update there. Yeah, it should give an error here because there's nothing inside the folder, right? So we can access the folder here, right? Now if we do an L, it created the app folder too. Let's enter it and let's create the file here. Let's try using the other browser here. Sometimes this happens. Yeah, it's still giving an error here. Academia Ponto Scriptcase Ponto Com Ponto BR. Just confirming here if I did everything right. Academia. And let's check inside here too, right? Here it's also correct, so we just need to wait a little for it to generate the certificate, and it will probably work perfectly there. So you will just need to set up this structure with these two files here for new projects. Then you start placing the projects inside your VPS. Let's put Docker here. In Docker stats, we can see all the containers that are running here and the consumption that is being used. So what is consuming the most here is MySQL, which is 0.37 of CPU, less than 1%. The memory here, MySQL uses more, we can observe here. The others here, Academy and School. Academy has nothing, so it is using 13 megabytes of memory. School is using 52, and here we have the percentage in memory so you can monitor how the resource usage is within your VPS. Here at Hetzner, we can also open the container here in graphs. We can visualize the usage here. We can observe here that it is using very little. We have 2 virtual CPUs. And it's at 5%, which is a very small amount, right? Of course, when you start adding multiple users at the same time, It's worth monitoring this resource usage to avoid having problems with your virtual private server. Depending, you replicate this structure, create another VPS, do this whole process there again, and put the other projects there. In the case of Hetzner, they have the VPS. This VPS here, let's put it here. Ashburn set this limit just for us to see here. It's x86. So we have this one I used, the cheapest one, $4.99. And there's another one here that will have 3 CPUs and 4 gigabytes of RAM, double the storage for $10. So, depending on the situation, you can use it too. Of course, you can use another platform to host your VPS, right? In this case, there are several: Contabo, AWS, DigitalOcean, and so on. You can choose one, check the configuration there, but the creation process here is basically the same. The only important detail that Hetzner has here is the edge firewall, meaning this firewall works outside the VPS. Although on the VPS as well, within Ubuntu, we also have the internal firewall. But here externally, you also have to open the ports here. In this case here, 22 is for SSH, 80 is the HTTP port, 443 is HTTPS, and so on. I was also using Scriptcase here. This is the ping. So you need to explicitly open the ports here for these options to work on the VPS. In this case, there is this firewall. If not, for example, Contabo does not have it. If I'm not mistaken, it doesn't have this edge firewall. So you will have to use the resources of the VPS itself to manage this firewall there, to avoid any kind of problem and attack and so on. Also, remember that I used a very relaxed firewall here, let's say, because here I'm opening, for example, SSH for all IPS. I could, for example, limit it to just my local IP from my local machine, to prevent anyone from another IP from trying to access my VPS and not succeeding. But here I changed this because my internet provider here keeps changing the IP all the time. So since we're working with tests, I said, I'll leave everything open here. But then, you can restrict as much as possible so that you have security in your production environment. Checking here in the infrastructure, my Docker compose is indeed wrong. I'll go into it again. Here in this part, look, I forgot to change it here because in the school container, the address here is educational. This one, the correct one, is the academy. Let's close save. This is normal to happen. Then we will kill this container here. It will remove the container and we will run it again. It's back. Let's try to access it again. Now, we already have the certificate working, and you now know the process to upload the files here and publish the Academy's system. I believe it won't be necessary to do this whole process again. You just need to go back to the video I made here and upload the files. So from now on, I have 2 projects, Academy and School, and I can add new projects here according to the necessity. So I hope it was clear.